which is our talk about today, is quite complicated and is part of sort of the fragile banking system of the third world. I mean, there were almost $1 trillion. That's why it's come in hundreds of billions of dollars have been lost. To be almost accurate, it's 854 billion been lost between 1970 to 2008. And if we go a bit deeper, the first place which money been lost or disappeared was Nigeria, 90 billion, followed by Egypt, 70 billions. So that's how the scale, 70 billions, virtually equivalent to the GDP of Egypt in 1 year. That makes what happened in Filipinos to Marcos as a child's play, comparing to what's happening the services projects, which some of them come through the nations from donor countries abroad as well, which again, they take part of the slice or control these new companies. And a lot of them, they got different names, so but they all of them cousin.
Thank you, Wafik, for those insights in Egypt and the support for the ROMMA Commission, which we will need because this is not a one-day wonder. Now, just for those who've just come in, the format of today is we're going to have 2 main sessions. This is the first session. It's going to be the next few speakers. It's going to be very well at the core of this today. Very hard-hitting, independent banking and legal experts to deal with what I call financial warfare. And then there'll be a Q&A. So hold on to your questions. We'll have a break, and then we'll have case studies on Libya, Iraq, Egypt, Africa, and Pakistan. Esther, you're most welcome here. Speakers have the privilege, parliamentary privilege, to sit up here, unless it's changed. They change the rules. What can I say? He's going to speak on behalf of Global Vision. He has worked in the Bank of England. He knows a thing or two, and in the City of London, and he's also advised governments who have been in crisis in the past, Malaysia, when Soros attacked its currency, and Turkey before its current strong position. So anyway, without further ado, I want to introduce Mohammed to speak on today's topic, the ROMMA Commission. He did speak at this very seat in March when we aired it, when the Arab Spring was, in full motion. But Mohammed, great privilege to have you here, and over to you. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Firstly, I'd like to address a couple of the points that were just raised over there. One of them, of course, is that, and I'll start with yours, Marine, morality. We have this idea of anti-money laundering that all the regulators in the world have been clamping down on over the last 10 years on the importance of the offshore industry to the UK economy at that time, as we used to have the Sark, Isle of Man, Jersey, Guernsey, all the rest of it going on. And of course we've got rid of all of that, and the man in the street no longer has access to tax structuring and sheltering his money. In the meantime, at exactly the same time, we have dictators of foreign lands taking funds which are ostensibly state funds. We know these are bad guys. We know that they didn't get this money as an inheritance or win the lottery. We know full well that they've got their hands in the state purse. And as an offshore jurisdiction, because one of the things to explain, I don't want to get too bogged down here, but every jurisdiction is technically an offshore jurisdiction to somewhere else. Once you put money in one place, it's hard for another to analyse it. And we see a great deal of pressure having been applied to Switzerland, say in the last few years, and the use of covert activities in Liechtenstein, whereby a man was paid in the last few years alone, vast quantities, we know where that money's come from. If we know where £5,000 has come from, if we have to demonstrate the source of funds, we know exactly where it's come from. And let's just add on to another point here, which is very important, Doctor. It's not hard to find, because there are now international computer systems which have been tracing every single payment. If you do international payments, you have to have a SWIFT code, an IBAN, as your target bank code, with account details on it. That information has to be stored for decades. Everything is available over there in Belgium, at the headquarters of SWIFT, which is owned by the banks jointly. There is also something called the Large Exposures Directive in international central banks, whereby any substantially large sum, relative to the economy obviously, but you can certainly go from, say, 30 to 50 million pounds upwards, has to go through a special form of approval process. So every penny that's been siphoned out of those countries, we know where it went on the first leg. And all we have to do, even in this stuff is so easy to find, we could even, we don't need Hercule Poirot, we can send Inspector Clouseau to find this stuff. It is not hard. And anybody that's...
We'll have obviously ample time for Q&A. The main message I got there is, as an expert on money, you're saying we can trace every penny in this day and age, which is good news. Okay, let's move onwards to dealing with this problem of financial warfare. We're two legal experts, both coming from independent backgrounds, and they will complement each other. And it's a great honour and pleasure to have one of the country's top independent legal minds, Philip Bray. Over to you, Philip.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, friends. I was going to kick off by reminding everyone this place is about politics, and politics is comprised of two mutually exclusive components of a conjunction. First, the adjective and syllable poly, meaning many, and ticks, which, when I last looked at my dictionary, were described as bloodsuckers. But I thought more carefully and decided that such a thorough interpretation and analysis of words was not becoming, based on the gravity with which I seek to articulate my talk today in this House of Lords. My eye is directed not at politics per se, but at a structural system in different sovereign jurisdictions that led to a deregulation of banking in the US, followed by the UK and the EU. What transpired to precipitate our economic turmoil was exacerbated by the decisions of politicians. It was an executive decision, taken at the highest level by the previous President of the United States, that deregulated the very strict laws that carefully regulated the financial system over the money power. It's this system and its regulation that I hope very concisely to explore today. It's a great pleasure to address you in this place at this critical time, a time of great conflict, division, social and economic manipulation. But everyone here that is brought together by common interest and unity, our current economic exigency is no economic enigma. What to some might come as a bolt out of the blue, it was not. It was built upon legal rules and the prospect of legal compliance. In the case of civil law, which is an aspect of law that regulates relations between different individuals or corporate entities between each other, or legal enforcement in the case of criminal law, which is the other aspect of law that regulates relations between the all-powerful sovereign state and individuals or corporate entities. Whereas civil law appears relatively tame, resorting to compliance, the state, however, asserts itself to its citizens through criminal law, imposing force, penal sanctions, and imprisonment, withdrawing civil liberties and human rights of its subjects of the crown, or its citizens. This goes to the very heart of our understanding of ourselves in this place. Are we mere subjects of the crown, or are we citizens? Perceptions, realities, understanding. Indeed, it was our linkage to the crown that determined our property rights, which ensured that the sovereign crown could confiscate our interest in the land and, if necessary, remove us as citizens on the most serious offence known to law, treason. The death penalty for same was only withdrawn as recently as 1998 under the Crime and Disorder Act. Denying the sovereign's official styles and titles, refusing to acknowledge the sovereign is the law. This gentleman, Zbigniew Brzezinski, was the strategic advisor not just to Jimmy Carter, but every single president since then, indeed to the current president, and also to David Rockefeller. The name of the book is called The Grand Chessboard, American primacy and its geostrategic imperatives. It's just very simple book, very easy to read, but it explains in very simple terms precisely US policy. Also, I draw your attention to, there's an excellent clip on the internet, Michael Rupert, called The Grand Chessboard Part 2, which explains, amongst other things, the US Treasury, the US exerted control over Russia by means of
new language, new players. Some of those words may have been, or organizations may have been new to some people, but we have to deal with these institutions and make them accountable. Now, I was going to, it was a 1-2, Nina, from the Global Arbitration Services. I see Lord Merlin Errol has arrived. I think the protocol, Merlin, is...
You're chairing.
No.
And I may have to rush off, so I didn't quite...
No, but that's why, because of your schedule, would you like to say a few words? You're on the programme.
Then you go first.
It's Nina, would you like to?
I don't mind, I mean, if you're limited by time, the member states, as it were, of the Arab Spring movement. Now, my background is in public international law. I'm a public international lawyer by training. That has been the practice that has led me to form my own company, which partly raises money for those that have lost investments in foreign countries with abuse of human rights. Now, why I'm interested in abuse of human rights combined with a piece of commercial litigation is that increasingly over the last 5 to 10 years, human rights law has merged with other elements of public international law, which more often or not were confined only to the sovereign arena. Public international law is the law that governs the relationship between states, primarily, as many of us are aware of the events happening over the last couple of months, primarily governed by the Charter of the International Nations, the United Nations. The rise of international human rights law more on the commercial level has been acknowledged in both the World Trade Organization rulings, the World International Property Organization rulings, as well as treaty rights of lots of investment claims. Why is this significant? It's significant because it means that human rights law, the law of the subject, the law of the people, is now available to the individual to sue states at the international level to assert rights. Why is that relevant to the work of the ROMMA Commission? It's relevant to the work of the ROMMA Commission, who is, as I understand it, looking to identify and work out legal tools of accountability to return funds to those that are now claiming new areas of sovereignty in certain parts of the world. The tools are beginning to exist in the line of human rights law, in terms of humanitarian laws, which are developing globally in the area of interstate disputes. And within that, as I say, there are now developing aspects of direct recourse rights, where individuals can themselves sue sovereigns for breaches of human rights law and humanitarian law. Now, why does that impact on the frozen assets? It impacts on the frozen assets in a very simple way. The frozen assets, in the case